So, just another quick video about VDJ2024, and this time it's about prepared stems and the files that those get stored in and what you can do with those if you need to like move them around or something like that. Because you may need to do that because of storage space and stuff, because they take up quite a lot of space. So maybe you need to move them to an external media or something like that, and you don't want to calculate them again or prepare them again, because that's quite heavy on the system, right? So like you can see, I already have quite a few prepared stems here on these tracks. It's a little blue icon here with the white lightning. That of course means that if I unload this track and I load this track, it'll instantly have stems, because it says here that it also already has prepared stems. So those are ready, and this is actually a pretty slow laptop. So if I didn't have prepared stems, it would take quite a while to calculate them. Let's just test it. So yes, I could instantly remove the drums, right? Like you would expect. And how is this stored? By default, well, the default is that it stores the stems file right next to the audio file. So let's take a look at this. So I go into File Operations, open in Explorer here. And you can see, if you look down here, that it has this audio file, the MP3 file, and then it has the stems file right next to it. And that's the default, and that'll just work. So that's the simplest way, but now we may want to move these things. So let's just say I want to move something. So I close this again, and I say, well, I want to do someplace else. And I've created another folder that I also made a favorite folder here called RKC2, so we can try to move it to there. So how do you do that? Well, of course, you can move it outside of Virtual DJ, or you can move it inside of Virtual DJ. And the cleanest way regarding letting Virtual DJ know what's happening is to do it inside Virtual DJ. So let's just try doing that. So I say File Operation, and I say Move To. And then I pick RKC2 here. And then it's, of course, gone. And then when I click RKC2, it's there, and I can see I have the stems ready. So let me just load that and see if that's actually true. Do I have them ready? Yes, they're indeed ready. And why is that? Well, that's because when you do it inside Virtual DJ, then Virtual DJ will actually know to bring the stems file right along with it. So looking into the RKC2 folder here, it has also moved the stems file. Okay, that's nice. But what if I made a little mistake, if you want to call it that, choose to do this outside of Virtual DJ? Well, let's try picking another track that actually has stems. So I'll look at, for instance, CloudDrive 87. So let's go back here and go into this thing, and I go in and find CloudDrive here, 87, and I only move the MP3 file. What happens then? So move that to RKC2. Sorry. Here. Like this. And then in Virtual DJ, I click that folder. And then it has CloudDrive 87, and it already figured out that it doesn't have stems for it. So when I load it, it starts calculating these stems. So they're not ready. Of course, they'll be ready pretty fast for right here. But if I play it, and I jump, and it doesn't really work, right? Because it isn't calculating it fast enough. So it's not using the prepared stems. So no prepared stems here. So I'll just unload that again. But you can say you kind of made a mistake here because you forgot to move the stems file along with it. But it doesn't really matter, because we can still catch up and do that. So if I go back here into the other folder, CloudDrive, and grab the stems file that's still here. And let's just say I copy that to the other folder. Doesn't matter, I can also move it. So now it's there. Then of course Virtual DJ won't know it's there. So even if I go in and out of this folder, then it'll detect that it's here. So it actually detects it every time it meets it. So it'll have already figured that out. You don't need to close down the software. You can just load the track. Just unload it first. And then load the track. And it'll have the stems right away. So this kind of setup is actually pretty forgiving. You can just move it around and bring the stems along with it. And if it's calculated, prepared the right way, has the right name, and you just bring it along on some point and place it right next to it, it'll just work. So that's pretty nice. And that is one way of handling prepared stems. But that's of course another way, because you can also have a prepared stems folder. So let's try implementing that instead. So if I go into settings now, I go into stems, you see down here I have a stems saved folder. Okay, so what's that do then? Well, that actually places prepared stems in a specific folder, right? And what do you want to do if you want to move some of that stuff around? Well, let's try first setting it up. So I'm going to go into the same place here. And now we go to VDJ stems. Okay, let's try that. So what happens now? Well, nothing really happens. You can still figure out that these things have instant stems, even though they're placed right next to it. It's only if I calculate a new one, like maybe this ant fire, it's going to take a little while, so bear with me. So if I go in here and I say save prepared stems, start calculating it, it's only now that it'll put stuff into the new folder. So let's just go to the new folder here. That's not it. So VDJ stems. And you can see that it starts making a weird folder name, and it starts adding a stems file. It's still called .tmp, temporary, because it's not done yet. So let's look back here. So how far have you gone? 52%. So it's working on it. And we'll just let it finish to see what happens. And just a few more seconds. So now it's done, and it has a prepared stem, and I load that track instead, and it of course has the stems right away, and it works. And if I go back to the folder, you can now see that now it's just called stem, VDJ stems assist, no temp, because it's done, right? So that's pretty cool. But what happens now if I choose to move this around? Well, I can certainly just go into to the settings here, and then I can go into stems again. And I say, well, I actually want to put this in another place. I want to put it in VDJ stems 2. Okay? So what happens then? Well, nothing happens instantly. We'll just unload this, the Antfire one. And it actually still has the icon, because it's stored in the database that this has the stems. But it hasn't figured out yet that it's not pointing towards the folder that has these stems. So if I load this track, it'll just instantly lose the icon and start calculating it again. So it won't be ready right now, right? So let me just test that. So it doesn't work when I jump, right? Because we have to calculate it again. Okay. So what would you do then? Well, since the actual folder generation, the folder name here, this weird thing is actually deterministic. That means that I can just move that around too. It'll actually recognize this if it meets the new location. So if I'm in VDJ stems and I move this, so outside here, and I go into VDJ stems 2, so this one, say, well, I think you need this. Now I've just moved it over there. And then when I go back to Virtual DJ, then it won't have figured it out yet, because how could it? But if I load this track, it'll figure out instantly that it has it in this folder that it's now pointing towards, and it'll be instantly ready. So again, you can basically move it around after the fact if you need to. Virtual DJ will figure it out if it matches the patterns, if you will, that you've set it up to match. And of course, it's a little harder the other way around. So if you have if something that's been calculated here and it's in here, it's a little harder because of these names. So there are really two things that can happen here. So let's say you don't want this stems folder anymore, at least not for this track, and you go in here and you say, well, let me just grab this one and then move it back to where the track is. So the and fire one, and I'm going back to RKC here. Sorry. This one, say, let me just put it in here, next to the track. So we have Ironfire, we have the VDJ stems. And I unload here. So now I've actually broken the system with the folders for stems. And I load this, and it'll instantly be ready because it's the basically default place that it is. So it just works, right? But what about the other way around? That's the hardest one because I can't really guess this weird folder name, right? So if I go back to my stems place here, it ended up being the stems 2.0, then this is kind of hard to guess. So what do I do then? Well, just as long as you calculate one file here or recalculate one file here, so one stems file, then so this is deterministic, then everything that's inside this folder will work if you move it to there. So let me just go back to the RKC folder here. So back and into RKC. And then I'm basically just gonna grab some of the stems file here. So low drop, and let's just say that one, and this running one. So I'm gonna grab those, and then I'm gonna copy them, and I'm gonna go back to the prepared stems folder. So that was the number 2 at the moment, right? We set to, and because it's in the same real folder on the hard drive, it'll match this folder, and I'll put them in here. So now they're not in the original position anymore. But even so, if I load one of them, like Jens here, the running one, this track down here, it'll still work because it matches the pattern. So you can get this folder generated, if you will, by just preparing one stems on one track, and then if you have prepared stems in the same folder, you can just move it to that folder in the stems folder, and it'll work, even though it's a little hard to read these names that it generates. So I hope this helps a little bit, even though it's a little bit complicated. But basically, it's kind of a gaming. So if you just eventually get the stems file put into the same folder as the track file, the audio file, if you move it around, then it'll work. And if you then use like a special folder for stems, that'll also work if you move it around. So it'll just figure it out. And if you take it from there and you put it back into next to the track, it'll work if you do that. But the other way around is a little bit harder. If you want to move it in, you need to have at least one track that's been actually prepared there, because then the folder is generated, and then you'll know where to put the rest of the tracks.